Okay, so you've chosen your domain, which remember it is the most important part, and now you know why we use that .us.com extension. The next thing you need to know is about hosting. And the first thing you should know is that you need a dedicated IP. Bing really takes into account your IP reputation. If you are on a website that has a bunch of other domains that Bing doesn't like, Bing's not going to like you either. And so you need a dedicated IP. Part of it is that reputation, and part of it is that Bing, when it sees you have a dedicated IP, I guess it gives you more trust. It says, okay, the site's important enough to be on its own server or its own IP address. It must be trustworthy, which is, I think it's a ranking factor that Google uses too, not as much as Bing, but it's still a ranking factor. So when you use this method, you're going to want to use your own IP address. But you're going to want to stay away from SEO hosting companies. Like I said, your IP reputation matters, and SEO hosting companies, I know they all say that they have, great IP addresses and great IP space and all of this, but the sad truth is most of them don't. They've been used and abused by SEO spammers for years and years, and their IP space is all junk. Anybody who's ever managed networks before and co-located their hosting before knows that IP blocks are given away in groups, and it's really hard to get different C classes or A classes the way most SEO companies claim they do. It's almost impossible, actually, which you'll learn why in a second. The best thing you can do is go with dedicated hosting companies. You don't need a dedicated server, but you need to go with hosting companies that sell it to everybody. You don't want to go with SEO hosting. You either want to host like, HostGator, which is what I like, or a VPS provider, which I'll name a few here in a minute. And if you're with a host like GoDaddy or HostGator, they'll usually charge you extra for an IP address. It's because, IPs aren't cheap. There's only a limited amount of them. And what you need to do, they'll ask you, why do you need an IP address for? And pretty much the only justification that's valid for most hosts is that you need it because you need an SSL certificate. Whenever you get an SSL certificate for your website to encrypt your submissions and your traffic, you are required to get your own IP address for technical reasons. And right now, that is the only justification for getting more IP addresses. If you don't need one, they'll tell you, hey, you know what, just stick with a shared IP address. But if you tell them that you need it for SSL certificate, they have to give you one. They pretty much don't have a choice. Now, some of them, when you tell them that you need an SSL certificate, they'll tell you that, oh, you can use our shared certificate, which is on a shared IP address. But you need to tell them, no, I need my own SSL and I need my own IP address for it. That is the only way you'll get them to give you a new IP. And just as a preventative measure, I'm sure a lot of you thought about using Cloudflare as your IP solution. Don't use Cloudflare. A lot of trusted sites use it, but you never know who else is on it. And it's better to always have your own IP address. It costs you a little more. You'll pay anywhere between $2 to $5 per month for that IP address. It just depends who your hosting company is, but it's worth it. You'll make it back soon enough. It can get a little bit pricey, You'll spend about, I want to say the average is going to be about $3 per IP address. So you exponentiate that across, 20 sites, and you come out to like $60 a month just in IP address fees. But it's worth it. You'll make that money back, and it's a solid investment, knowing so you can be sure that you're not going to have any problems with your IP reputation. It's more than worth it. And the hosting companies I like I said, HostGator, I know a lot of people make fun of them because they're, kind of on the low end. But for this, they're fine. I mean, you're not going to do anything too intensive with your site. It's a basic WordPress website, and it's good enough. HostGator's great. and they don't charge that much for IP addresses. At the time of this recording, they charge $250. So some people are aged. If you have an older account with them, that's an older package, you might be able to get them for about $1. But if not, you can expect to pay probably around $250, $3 for each IP address. HostGator does operate an SEO hosting company. I forget what the name of that company is now. It's something like SEOhost.com or whatever. Avoid it. If you start getting a lot of IP addresses, they might tell you, hey, we have this other service for IP addresses. But those IP addresses come from an SEO hosting service that they run on the side. You don't want to use those IP addresses. So if they tell you anything about, oh, we can cut out a special deal for you, just tell them no. It sounds good, but what they're going to do is they're going to give you basically dirty IP space, which is not something you want for Bing. And Vultr.com, it's a VPS service, also very good. If you've never managed a virtual private server before, they make it very easy to get up and running. Their online control panel, it's point and click. You choose where you want your server located. You choose the operating system, which is Linux, and you choose any software that you want installed, which in this case would be WordPress. And in 3 clicks, you choose those settings and it's up and running, and it's very easy to manage, very easy to operate. It's a lot easier than a lot of other VPS providers. And you also have the option of DigitalOcean. Again, another VPS provider, charges $5 a month. The only thing about DigitalOcean, they do have that same one-click install for WordPress, but it's a little bit more complicated with them. If you're going to use DigitalOcean, I think you should use them with Cloudways. It makes managing your VPS a lot easier. Pretty much what you'd get with Vultr, except with DigitalOcean. And if you're going to use a WordPress website, which you should know that you need at least 1 GB of RAM, and you need to enable caching. You need to enable caching, number one, because WordPress does hog up a lot of RAM. By caching it, you can severely reduce that load on the server. And number two, we'll get into later, is because Bing really does value website speed. I know it's something, when people talk about website speed, they think about Google, but Bing actually did it first, and they put a higher threshold on it. So site speed is more important with Bing than it is with Google. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for now, you just need to remember to use your own IP address. Don't use any shared IP addresses. If your host asks you why you need an IP address, tell them it's because you need an SSL certificate. That is the only justification that they'll accept, and the only way you'll get an IP address. I know it's kind of weird, but there's just not enough IP addresses for all the devices out there, and hosting companies, they're really stingy with their IP space because it costs them money to obtain, so they don't want to just hand them out like candy. So the only valid way to get one is to say that you need it for an SSL certificate. Any other excuse you give them, if you tell them, hey, I want to rank a website in Bing, or I need to host a bunch of different websites on different IP addresses because I'm doing this SEO thing, they're going to tell you to buzz off, and they'll say no. You need to tell them that it's for an SSL certificate. And for hosting, go with the companies HostGator. You can go with GoDaddy, Bluehost. The most important thing is to get that unique IP address. That's the most important thing with hosting. And we'll go into a little bit later, but caching. Caching is also crucial for your website performance because it is very, very important in Bing. But that's all you really need to know about hosting. It's not too different than anything else. It's like any other website. You just need that IP address is the most important thing. As long as you get that and you obtain that, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about the rest.